You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to episode 137 of A Life in Ruins podcast. Reinvestigate the careers of those living a life in ruins. I did that wrong.
Yeah, you did.
What am I supposed to
read? It was like all one word.
Okay, I'm going to redo that again. Just leave it. Damn it. See, this is where I'd say, like, Rachel edited out, but you're right here.
And you know we're going to leave all this in, so.
I know. Welcome to episode. God damn it. Welcome to episode 137 of A Life in Ruins podcast, where we investigate the careers of those living a life in ruins. I'm your host, Carlton Gobert. I am joined by my co-hosts, David Howe and Connor Johnnon. It is that time of the year, ladies, gentlemen, Apache attack helicopters, that's the word. It is our annual performance review by our Archaeology Podcast Network overlords, wrangler of Archaeology Podcast Network monkeys. I meant to say Life in Ruins. This is the Adderall that I recently got prescribed that I'm still coping with right now, and that's where all this nightmare is coming from. It is Chris Webster and Rachel Roden. You two, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I'm really happy that we've kind of continued this tradition of having at least one of you present. Chris, you've been here all 4 years at this point, right? Yep. And yeah, Rachel, this is your second time. You missed the first and third, but now yep. We're back. So with that being said, Rachel, since we haven't seen you in quite some time, how have you been in 2022?
I'm pretty good. I mean, just doing my thing, editing some podcasts here and there, doing some archaeology, but more tangentially to archaeology rather than actual archaeology. So that's my thing. That's what I'm doing.
Good stuff. Well, awesome. And what about you, Chris? How have you been?
Well, you know, my workload just continues to increase. In the first 1 minute and 15 seconds of this show, I counted at least 15 edits I got to do. So unless Rachel does them. So
yeah, we kind of switch off. You never know which of us is going to edit the show. So
yeah, you know, aside from that, it's been a busy year as usual.
Where are you guys at right now?
So we're in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's where Rachel's family is from, and I can let her tell you a little bit about where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, I just grew up here, and my family all still lives here. And since we live in an RV and we can go anywhere we want, whenever we want, because we also work remotely and, you know, just need internet, which was actually kind of difficult for the last couple of weeks. But now we're in a pretty good situation. We can just be here for the holidays every year, and I get to play with my nieces and nephew, and it's super fun.
Nice.
How long have you guys been doing the RV gig at this point?
It's 2.5 years at this point. We started in June of 2020 with our first RV, and now we're on our second RV and halfway through our third year. So,
yep. Cool. It was kind of pandemic related, but it was sort of like the circumstances just sort of came together because I left my full-time job literally like 3 weeks before the pandemic started. When I decided to leave my job, like all we knew was that people were getting sick in China, and that was that.
Yeah.
But then the world shut down and I had already quit my job, which would have become remote, which would have been amazing. I probably would have stayed at my job, but that's all right. We hit the road. We bought that RV that just worked out for us. And I think it was the right decision for sure to do this instead.
Yeah. Yeah, for
so
sure.
When did you guys get the bigger one? Because I know you kind of had like this is Mach 2 or version 2 of the...
Yeah, you guys have a mansion.
Well, and David, you've seen it. You saw the first one that we had, and this one is actually
my house.
Yeah.
The new one we got just this last September, and it's actually 10 inches shorter than the first one, but so it's 35 feet and like 4 inches or 5 inches or something. But it's much bigger inside because, you know, if you've ever seen a Class A RV, it's got slides. Well, the slides in the living room go out like an extra 1.5 feet on both sides. And we've got 2 slides in the back versus 1 slide. So that allows us to have, in a shorter space, that allows us to have a king size bed in the back and a washer and dryer. And, you know, we've got
more space,
all the comforts of home. And this one's a 2022 as well. So it's got the updated like technology and all that stuff. So It's fancier than our car. So that's, not really saying a whole lot. We have a Ford C-Max at the moment. Hopefully that'll change soon. But yeah,
the car's not amazing.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons we upgraded, because we moved to a diesel. So we've got a 10,000 pound towing capacity as opposed to 5 now. So now we can get something a little bigger.
Yeah. We really want something we can go off-road.
Yeah. So the cool thing about diesel is it's so cheap right now.
Oh, Jesus.
It is better.
Yeah. we switched out RVs from a gas RV right when gas started getting down to $3 and less. I'm like, come on.
But the gas mileage is way better. So yeah, we're getting almost 900 miles, almost 1,000 miles out of a tank of gas, and that's 100 gallons. So it's still only about 10 to maybe 12 miles to the gallon, depending on what altitude we're at. But it's better than the 6 or 7 we were getting with the other RV. Yeah.
You can
Neither
hold
of which
100
sounds
gallons?
great.
Yeah, we have 100 gallons.
Yeah.
That's wild. I get 30.
Yeah.
Or I think it's like 40, maybe.
40-gallon tank in your bus?
Yeah, like put it this way, from Cheyenne to Laramie, I had to fill up. So it's like, it doesn't work well. I also just want to say for the record, I got a Zoom invite today saying that we had a performance review, and I was like, oh, that's weird. We've never had one of those. So I logged in, ready to do it. And then Connor was like, we're on Zencaster. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Easier to do, I guess. And then I hopped on and we're recording a 3-segment episode. And I just took a painkiller, so prescribed one. So yeah, this is a fun surprise.
That would be Chris's dumb scheduling system thing with his calendar. It sends out a Zoom invite whether you like it or not.
I just need to be smarter. It's, I think, the moral of the story.
We did have a conversation with David he might have been under the influence of some sort of painkiller, but we did have a conversation where we established that this was going to be the thing we do every year.
Apparently I told the nurse my name was Timothy, so anything was possible.
Nice. I like doing these. I appreciate it. And it makes me actually want to, I don't know about doing it on a podcast episode, because you guys have kind of the only show that this is appropriate to have an episode about for, it just fits. But it makes me want to do this type of interaction with all the podcast hosts at least once a year, just to check in. Cause I mean, with all this being virtual, there's hosts, of course, that I've never met. I've been working with them for a long time and I've never met them. And so the only time we get to interact is on, random Slack conversations, but normally it's just like audio comes in, we process it and kick it back out. And that's pretty much it. We don't have to talk to anybody, but it would be nice to have that FaceTime, I guess, a little bit and keep that going.
Are you guys going to SAAs this spring?
It's not in the cards for us right now. It's not in the works. And if anybody listening to this happened to hear an episode of the Sierra Mark podcast in the last couple of months, we had something about professional organizations, and I kind of went on a rant, and Bill White did too. We're kind of getting a little bit disenfranchised with the big organizations. It's fun to go see people, don't get me wrong. It's fun to go there and hang out, but that's almost literally all they're providing you. And for the thousands of dollars it takes to get there, I feel like we could do better and we can do something else, which is why we're trying to kick something up on the APN and Culturo side of things and, make it a little more meaningful. If I want to go meet up with a bunch of people, we live in an RV, we'll just travel around the country and meet people. But yeah, so the short answer to that is no, I don't think we are. And I don't know if we're going to be going to one in the foreseeable future. We were going to go to Lisbon too, for SHAs, but just kind of backed out on that for other plans. It just didn't seem logistically worth it, to be honest. Mm-hmm. They don't make it worth it. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. Not to bring it down, Carlton. Academic.
No, I mean, it's been well documented.
I think it's worth it.
Well, you got professor money, right? You get paid to go over and do that stuff. So I don't want to hear it.
I do. That is true.
Where is it at next year?
Portland.
Portland. I'm going to dye my hair blue and knock some statues over. Really excited.
Are we talking about SHAs or SAAs?
SAAs in Portland.
Oh, yeah.
We got to figure out what block we're going to take over.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But kind of moving this back into a archaeology and podcast related. kind of topic. And for those that have listened to these reviews before, you know that we actually don't get into much archaeological literature or anything here. We really just kind of talk about like really an annual performance review of like what has the APN been doing this past year? How has A Life in Ruins been doing this past year? But the APN has seen some new podcasts come to the network. So who have you guys brought into the fold?
Yes. So this year, I think there's 2 new ones and 1 reboot, if I'm not mistaken. I have to think about it, but one of the ones was, I think that was this year. Flipside, I think she started at the beginning of the year, and her name is Leah Tilley, who hosts that. She actually started the podcast and then had some health issues of her own and had to kind of bail on it for a few months. And then she's slowly coming back to it. But her podcast, when she really gets it going, again, she's only a few episodes in and it's monthly, but it's supposed to be looking at events in history and then talking to people about what we don't know about those events in history, right? That's kind of where it is. The flip side of the event, if you will. That's where she gets the name. So taking the stuff that we really know and kind of looking underneath that and digging into it a little bit. And then there's Tea Break Time Travel by Matilda Siebrecht, who is also our MC, if you will, for the Culturo Share events, which we may talk about later. But she's helping set those up and ran our first one back in November. But she also runs a podcast called the Tea Break Time Travel. And I can't remember where her Instagram is, but her Instagram started from that. I think it's called Tea Break Archaeology, if I'm not mistaken. But she started that and does like this weekly Instagram reel kind of thing. Archaeologist Teacup. That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And because David was a guest on her show on one of the episodes.
Yeah. I told her at the end of it too. In the beginning, she said she was nervous because she'd only done a few, but like she was a wonderful interviewer, like asked great questions, stayed on topic. Like it was one of my favorite that I've done. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like her show too. She's very conversational. She's very comfortable. She doesn't seem nervous. You know, some people, while they may be nervous, they like act nervous, and she doesn't seem nervous, and it doesn't come through the show. So, and she's got experience enough to have a dialogue about most things. So she's, I think I just posted her episode 7, which will be out as we're recording this. So it'll be out in like a week and a half. But as you're listening to this, it's already out. Her episodes are monthly as well. And then we rebooted the Pseudo Archaeology podcast. It's been on hiatus for about 4 or 5 years now. It was started originally by Sarah Head, who has the Archaeology Fantasies persona online. And Sarah, the Archaeology Fantasies podcast, all about pseudo archaeology, was one of the first 3. Let's see, we started with 4 podcasts when we started the APN a little over 8 years ago, and it was four shows, and Archaeological Fantasies was one of the shows. Eventually, she wanted to take her brand in other directions, and she took her show off the APN. But as per our agreement, we left the feed live and changed the name so she could take the name with her because that was her brand. And Dr. Andrew Kinkella, who is a host of the Sierra Mark podcast, took over the feed and has now put out, I think probably close to 10 episodes at this point. And it's just him right now. He's got a lot to say, and he's doing, somewhat shorter episodes, still 3-segment format, but it's him talking about pseudo-archaeology.
Yeah. His show is fun because he'll do like an episode of a personal experience that he's had with something kind of pseudo related. And then he'll do like a deep dive researched episode about something in the pseudo world and just kind of break it down. And he does a really good job of I guess like describing that stuff in a way that is fun and entertaining too. I need a little bit of like fun and entertainment. I like editing his podcast a lot. It's good.
Are we ever going to get more of historical yarns, or is that show just?
Oh my God.
Is that history?
Bare? Is the thread bare at this point?
I mean, I totally would do it. I lost my co-host, number one. She's just way too busy with kids. And she and her name's Heather Boyd. She and I had like such great chemistry, and I just can't think of anybody else who I would want to do that with. I mean, Chris and I, obviously we do our podcast together, the Archaeology Show, and like we're great chatting together, but he doesn't know it. You don't know anything about yarn or fiber. You know what I tell you, and I don't really think you're that interested in learning about it either. So
I know way more than I feel I should, but not enough to co-host the podcast.
I mean, we could take the teaching format where I teach you about things, but then again, I'm not really an expert either. I just enjoy it and I like to learn about it. So I don't know. It's on hiatus for the moment. We'll see if I ever go back to it.
I wanted to ask you guys. So we normally get stats from you every month showing how well we did.
Yeah, when I don't suck at that.
Yeah, well, you only got like what 20 podcasts.
I mean, what can you do?
Or whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's been really impressive, the rise of the archaeology show. Like it is like, it's like meteoric. Like, could you talk about where that came from? And
well, there's a clear reason why that's happened. Chris, did you want to, share what that reason is?
Yeah, it's I just decided to have a better personality, so I changed my entire being, and people really latched onto that. It had nothing to do with Rachel joining the show. So, yeah.
Honestly, I think we just got more consistent with it. We got a more consistent format, and we started focusing on things that were happening in the news and kind of in pop culture too. And I think all of those things just helped us reach a larger audience, basically.
The crazy thing is, and it's a little bit of a lesson for people growing a podcast, is we haven't done anything different with that show than any of the other shows, right? We're shit at social media, just like we are with the whole APN, right? We don't really even promote this show
fair
in any separate way from just stuff that's promoted on the APN. And I don't know, I think it just, like Rachel said, I think it just struck a chord. And when your audience starts sharing the episodes, which must be happening for growth, it's the only thing I can imagine, then that goes. The other thing that could be doing it is I intentionally named the show when I first started it, and it had a very different format like 5 years ago. I intentionally named it The Archaeology Show, so it could be incredibly searchable. And, somebody types archaeology into a podcast player, it should show up right away. So I think that's probably helping, but it didn't help right away. We didn't have those kind of numbers when we first started the show when I was with April and then doing other things. But again, Rachel mentioned the consistency. We weren't doing it enough. And when we went to weekly and kept it that way, the numbers really started to climb. So
whatever happened to the I Dig It podcast?
Yeah, I was wondering that myself. They went on hiatus. They said they were going to, because they were two students and they were one was going to grad school and the other one, I'm not sure what she was doing.
Oh, it must have been hard to run a podcast while you're in graduate school.
You guys don't know anything about that, do you? Just curious.
I was about to say that, but not facetiously. I forgot we just went through all of it.
And Carlton is a freak, so I don't want to hear from you.
How many organizations are you? Depression.
Honestly, I think they just lost the feel for it, to be honest, and just didn't want to do it anymore. I don't think they're doing anything else. I think they were honest with me and that they just didn't want to do the podcast anymore, because they actually ghosted me completely, and I tried reaching out to them on Slack, and I eventually got them on because I was on their Discord channel they had for the show, and that Discord just like keeps going. There's people there that are continuing to have discussions over there apparently, and I don't even know if they're in it anymore, but they started this thing for the show, and then there's just people there, and that's when I eventually got a hold of them, and they're like, yeah, we're not going to do it anymore. It's like, all right, whatever. It happens.
I mean, podcasts are just a lot, and I don't think you know how a lot it is until you do one. And then it's a choice. Like, do you want to keep doing this thing that takes up way more of your time than you ever thought it would? And it's cool if you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah. And there's just, so many, like everyone and their uncle has a podcast now too. And my friends will be like, dude, I was listening to this pod. You should check this one out, dude. Like every day. And I'm like, I can't physically listen to this many podcasts.
It's just too much. I don't even listen to anything other than podcasts when I'm listening to things now, and I still can't get caught up on the ones that I want to listen to. So
yeah,
it's almost overwhelming.
Yeah, there's a lot, to keep doing one. It's probably, especially when you're like just starting, it's probably a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're like 2 years in and decide to take like a 2 month hiatus, it can be at the beginning, it can be in the middle, it can be at any point,
And on that note, we'll return to episode 137 here for annual and on that note, we'll be right back with guests Chris Webster and Rachel Roden here on episode 137 of A Life in Ruins podcast.
Welcome back to episode 137 of A Life in Ruins podcast. We're getting roasted here by Chris Webster and Rachel Roden, our overlords of the APN. We wanted to chat at least a little bit and talk about numbers. Like how many numbers, what do they look like for us? What is the trend? Are we going to go under? When do we get pulled?
Right. Well, so keeping in mind that you guys were going through some changes, all of you, right? All three of you were going through some stuff in, what was that, September, I think it was. And we ran some reruns for a little while. It just, it is what it is. But I've definitely done that before. And then the APN went through a whole project shutdown sort of time frame in October. I call it project shutdown because the company I work with, that's what they do right now. But anyway, we went through a little bit of a shutdown in October just to kind of reset and retool a little bit. So keeping all that in mind, you guys still had overall 14% growth this year over last year, which is great. It means your audience, the people listening to this, are sharing the podcast and, telling their friends about it and saying, hey, go listen to this great show, or at least sharing episodes or something like that on their social media. So that's really good. So looking at this overall in November, now we changed our hosting service here at the APN. You may have heard Zencastr ads in the first half of this year. We were in partnership with them, and we still are. And we've basically moved everything from the hosting service we've had for the last 4 years over to Zencastr as they've developed their hosting service. And that's going to allow us to really hopefully elevate everybody in the coming year, especially starting in Q1 of 2023, as you're listening to this now. Looking at that, though, the last we have numbers for our past hosting service was 4,831 downloads in November. Now, that's a little bit lower than the months for the rest of the year, but only because, again, we were coming off no new shows in September and not really any new shows in October either. So that's kind of, or I guess it was November that we shut down, wasn't it? Or was it October? No, it was October. That's right.
October.
Yeah. So coming off of that, that's not bad. That's good audience retention, right? People were still at least downloading the episodes and not leaving the show as subscribers. And in this setup here, just from January to November, that's 60,000 downloads, just a shy of 60,000 downloads for the year, which means, including the numbers from our new hosting service for December, you should be somewhere around 65,000 for the year. And just at the end of November, that was 14% growth over the previous year. And 14% is a lot. I mean, that's good. So, if you keep jumping up like that, then it's, it takes a long time in podcasting to do this. Unless you're already a celebrity, it takes a long time to gain new audience members every year and just bring those up to whatever numbers you're happy with, So with our new platform, the numbers may not matter as much. So, but we can talk about that.
Sweet. And those numbers do not include people that download or listen to our show on the All Shows feed, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. And again, that may change, although that is a really logistically difficult problem to solve unless we just get rid of the All Shows feed altogether. It's really hard to quantify what goes onto that feed. But like I said, we may be able to, since we're with Zencastr now, and they're new in the dynamic ad insertion market. That's why we moved over to them, and that's what we're talking about here. Really is advertising. They're new in this whole thing, and because they're new, and I got in on the ground floor with them, we're partners with them in this whole deal. We may actually be investing in Zencastr here shortly. They're asking networks and podcasters to maybe invest in them to help them build out some more services, which is really cool. I just actually saw that email not too long ago, and because we're at this level, I'm hoping to have a little more flexibility. So one of the reasons we moved over here is we really like Zencastr. Megaphone is what we were on. Megaphone was purchased by Spotify while we were part of this. And as everything else that's purchased by Spotify, I don't mind Spotify. It's great. It is what it is, but they like to own everything. That's why they bought Joe Rogan. That's why they're buying other podcast networks. And when they bought Megaphone, to me, the writing was kind of on the wall for Megaphone. Like, if you're not on Spotify exclusively, you may not be able to use Megaphone is what people are thinking in the future. So I was shopping around anyway. And the way Zencastr is going to do stuff is they're going to have what they call programmatic advertising on your shows, which basically means they are seeking big advertising deals. So they'll take the guys that we can't possibly hit with our numbers individually, right? They'll take those big guys, and those big guys are going to say, I want to buy 100,000 downloads of advertising on this show in a month, right? We can never land a client like that. We just don't have the numbers, the per episode numbers, but us and 15 other podcasts might have those numbers. So they're going to be splitting all that up and divvying up the numbers and just giving the advertiser the downloads that they need, but spreading it across networks and other shows. We still get the same amount, right? As though we were doing it, but we get the amount corresponding to our downloads. So we will still be paid according to the numbers, but we don't have to search out any advertising. Of course, they take a cut for that. But if we can get this going and they can really keep it going, then that is going to change a lot of stuff here at the APN. You know, if we can start paying for things like editing and social media and marketing and things like that, then we can start elevating all the podcasts through those efforts and, you know, bringing things up. Not only that, but continuing the efforts to monetize this for you guys a little bit. It's difficult when shows have 3 hosts because you got to split it 3 ways. But, you know, either way, you're not going to quit your day jobs for this show, probably ever, unless, you know, it gets like stupid big. But that's where we're at. So that's what we're kind of hoping for in 2023. I've had a lot of talks with the management and the leadership at Zencaster, and the dynamic ad insertion and programmatic ads should start in January. And that's when hopefully everything goes up.
So where do we rank now? Because the dirt has left the APN.
That's
so
right.
Now where does that put Ruins? Did we take the number 2 slot? Because it's the archaeology
2, right?
show up there.
Yeah, it should be.
We're number 45 in Denmark.
That was the weirdest ranking.
So looking at Megaphone for the year, we were at around, by the end of November, we were at just over 900,000 downloads across the entire network, which is pretty great. And that was approaching. I was hoping to hit 1 million downloads this year, but it looks like we're going to be just shy of that by a few tens of thousands. And we probably would have hit it had we not shut down in October, to be honest with you. But that being said, that does put you guys into, not including the network feed, that puts you right behind the Archaeology Show. So the Archaeology Show had 171,000 downloads in 2000 up to November of 2022, and the Life in Ruins podcast was really close to that 171 with 59,000 downloads. So you have just a
smartass,
just a little ways to go. But that being said, too, the dirt was only at a 131. They were still 40,000 off of the Archaeology Show too. Again, I have no idea why people like the Archaeology Show so much. It's got to be Rachel, because I was doing it for 3 years before that, and I did not have even close to those numbers. So
it's just because I give you crap the entire episode.
I guess so. I don't know. Well, and here's the other contender you have. So the dirt left right as pseudo-archaeology started gaining its audience back, because the Archaeological Fantasy Show, I almost started the Archaeology Show in response to the Archaeological Fantasy Show, because I was irritated that the show was always on top and it's always about pseudo-archaeology, and it just like irritated me. And I wanted to create a show that elevated and jumped up in the numbers, and I did, but it really took the Archaeological Fantasy Show going off the network for that to really happen, because she just got like massive numbers for that show. And Andrew is already up to right behind you guys, and he kicked the show back off. It still consistently was getting downloads even without episodes for 4 years. It was still consistently getting numbers. And so with him only kicking it back off in, I think, June or so, give or take, May or June, it had 28,000 downloads up through November of last year, which is about half what you guys have. So it's coming up there. You know, we'll see how it does.
That averages to almost like just shy of 5,000 downloads a month just from our show alone.
You're doing the math with your hand right there. That just dawned on me.
What?
Yeah, that's 5,000 downloads a month, I think.
It looked like you had like a pen and paper and were like doing stats right there as you were talking.
Oh yeah, I was
like doing some long division.
Yeah, I had it. I was taking notes.
Did you do Bayesian? How did we get to it?
No, I just wrote down the numbers. It's the Adderall. I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, I feel like I heard numbers and I was like, I should write these down, and that's what I did. Like, I don't know why I'm gonna do. Yeah, anyways.
Real quick, one more stat I can give you guys too. Your number 1 downloaded episode in 2022, again up through November, was episode 105, the domestication and it says domestication and human brain size with Stefan Milo, and that was 1,342 downloads. And
that was an excellent episode, if I remember correctly.
It was great. Yeah, I do remember that one. April 25th, 2022 is when it was downloaded. Or when it was created, and it's about 200 over the last one. So, yeah. Well, that's that's a good lesson, right? I mean, you probably always tell your guests to share out, but you guys interview a lot of people. I mean, not all the time, but you do interview a lot of people that do have their own followings on social media, and getting them to, purposely share out and do stuff is one way to build an audience for sure.
Yeah, and we've built a rapport with Stefan over the years. Like, he's always a blast to have on. I mean, same with we have those targeted, like when we need a fun time, it's, we have our group, but part of me asking like our numbers and things like that. And then you mentioned like why the archaeology show is so popular. So like last week, out of curiosity, because I was thinking about our numbers and I was looking at the spreadsheet that I had from 2021, and we've kind of remained around that same like 3,500 to 4,500 range. We haven't really grown super much. Of course, that's what I thought, but you just said we had an 11% increase.
Yeah, 14.
So I just asked Reddit, because like we've done this before where we'll ask our Instagram followers, like, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? But those that usually follow our Instagram are either there for the memes or they're our friends and they listen. So like we've gotten like positive reinforcement where it's like, well, we enjoy your show. It's like talking to a friend. And then so I asked Reddit out, r/archaeology on a whim. I was like, hey, I'm one of the hosts of A Life in Ruins. This is where we've been these past couple of years. Like, what can like, do you guys have critical feedback to like make the show better if you listen and stop? And we got responses, like it got well liked. People like were pretty nice. Like one person was like, no one wants to hear three guys talk, like just hang out. And I'm like, okay, you're not listening to our show, because that's
okay. Boom.
There's always somebody who says that.
Yeah, but everyone else was like pretty good. And folks were like, I stopped listening in March because I don't have an archaeology background. And so what it felt like to me was like hanging out with my girlfriend's friends that I didn't know. That's how they felt. And that was the consistent, like if they weren't students, like undergrads or graduate students within archaeology, they didn't feel they were included. Left out in the cold. They were like, I don't understand these references. Like, I don't understand this inside joke about this archaeologist. And that's where they talked. And someone mentioned the archaeology show specifically. Like, I still watch the archaeology show because they explain the topics, and like they're able to do that. So I can understand as a layman and enjoy the content. Whereas you guys, like, it just felt like a club. And so then we kind of started realizing on our feedback and our platform, like, that's kind of what we have developed, is we didn't really make a show necessarily for everybody. It really became a show for early career archaeologists and students in particular, which makes sense with my graduate career. And then David and Connor graduating their masters just as we started. And that's who we kind of had on a lot of times. And I
don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. I mean, you want to have a target audience. You want to have like a group of faithful people that are going to be coming back. And this generation, there are always going to be new archaeologists who are looking to get in the field and that. And I think what we've talked about is expanding that and having more different types of episodes. So where we take different approaches and just take something that's in the news and kind of go over just the basics of it and talk about what's going on, which is something I think that the archaeology show is, you guys are really good at, is you bring that stuff to light and you have those conversations about stuff that's relevant. And it seems to work.
It is. Real quick, it is important to think about your audience, though, right? Like, you have to create that avatar of the person who is listening to the show and what you want them to know and what their knowledge level is to begin with, right? Like, I've never stressed about the numbers for the CRM Archaeology Podcast. We're about to hit 10 years of doing that show. We just recorded 255 to the 255th episode, and yet still our numbers are about the same. We get, 500 to 600 or 700 downloads per episode, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 a month or something like that. But that's like the size of the people who listen to podcasts in CRM to begin with. Even with those numbers being, relatively low as far as a super niche podcast goes, there's still hardly anybody in CRM Archaeology that I've talked to in the past that has not listened to or heard about the CRM Archaeology Podcast, because we've been around for 10 years. And that's the whole goal of that show, right? The whole goal of that show is to present this information to that audience. And that's who we do it for. And we don't feel the need to break down any terms or anything like that, unless we're specifically, defining something. But I would say for your show, that is one piece of feedback I would give you, is sometimes, unless it's your audience, sometimes you guys do get really technical on some things and get into some stuff academically that some people may be lost on. You know what I mean, Rachel?
I think what I would say is
wait. This is our show. We decide who goes, Chris. I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
I know, right? You totally did.
Rachel, you go next.
For those that are listening, there's a function on Zencastr where you can raise your hand if you want to speak next. And Rachel's the first guest who's ever used that feature. And then like Chris was like, "Go ahead, Rachel, it's your turn." It's like, wait a minute, you're a guest here. But please, Rachel, sorry.
It's a hard habit to break.
Yeah, we use it all the time on our show when we have a guest. So I think what I would say about your show is that I actually always used to ask Chris to edit it. And I've kind of stopped doing that because I'm very slow at editing. And the more tracks you have, the longer it takes. And Chris is just faster at it. But when I have the time to do it, I love to edit your guys' show because I'm listening as I'm editing. And I love the like camaraderie that you guys have because you're clearly buddies and you have been for a long time. And I know that you got some feedback that maybe people didn't like that as much. But that's honestly what I love about listening to your show. And the only thing I would say is I do have an archaeology background. So when you go into the weeds a little bit on things, I can mostly follow and keep up with it. Right. So I think the only feedback I would say is that just try to take that pause and explain things a little bit more. Ask your guests to explain whatever term they just used was that maybe isn't a layperson term. That might be a way to engage people in the conversations and still keep who you are as a podcast, you know? Like you're still a niche topic and I think that's great and you guys are really good at it. So you shouldn't lose who you are as a podcast, but maybe just try to bring more people in with more explaining and slowing it down a little bit, you know?
Chris? Yeah, I did it. Thank you. I did a my hand was clearly raised. One of the episodes I did, if you're listening to this in real time, it was a few weeks ago, episode 198 of the Archaeology Show. Rachel was busy. It's a whole lot of busy family time. So I did a solo episode.
I abandoned him. It's okay. You can say it. I do it.
She did. Yeah. It was a day before release and we had nothing. So I recorded an episode called just the Archaeology of the APN. And I went into, it was, a few weeks after the anniversary of the 8-year anniversary of the APN. And I just wanted to go into for people who hadn't heard of our other shows. And I really just broke down where the APN started. I talked about all the current active shows. And one of the things I mentioned about your guys' show was exactly what Rachel said. I said, some of my favorite episodes of your guys' show are when it's just the three of you. And you're talking, not necessarily, the catch-up episodes are fun, but if you want to get into more archaeology, where you're talking about what you're doing and things that you guys have done and just getting into a single topic. I really like those because you guys have a good, you guys gel well together.
Yeah.
I noticed that with the, forgive me, hang on. I noticed that I just raised my hand. The episode where me and Connor I think we were talking about pseudoscience just in general, but we ended up doing the Lord of the Rings monologue.
Oh,
the prologue.
I edited that one. I love that episode.
Yeah, and I could tell like you guys had fun with it because you changed my voice and you even like added like a lot of humor to it with like the voice. So
Chris
funny.
did that part. Yeah.
And I was like in my when I messed up the monologue, still in the voice. It was like, hang on, guys, just and I thought that was so funny because I could tell you get bored editing sometimes, I'm assuming, and then like that one you were like, oh, and like what? Yeah, but
yeah,
I too like I listen to a lot, Connor does as well, like a lot of comedy podcasts, and like I was explaining to my parents the other day, like it's weirder, like it's harder for me to sit and watch a stand-up special now, more so than it is to just listen to comedians talk to each other, and I think that's what's really good about like our kind of podcast. It's like especially for other archaeologists, like it's fun to sit in and hear other archaeologists talk about stuff that you know. But for sure, if you're someone who's not used to archaeology and just wants to hear about the Sphinx, like it's not for them, and we probably need to find a medium. But and on that note, I guess we will come back in segment 3 with some more roasting. Welcome back to episode 137 of a Life in Ruins podcast. We're back
sausage.
here. With the pocket sausage. I have to put my microphone in my shirt pocket because my hands are fade fast. But this wouldn't be our annual surprise performance review that I thought was the actual performance review without some roasts. But you guys wanted to start with roasts of your own show, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well, I mean, we're talking about, the archaeology show's got so many downloads and blah, blah, blah. But, we still have haters. And this one here that from May 26, 2022. So we'd already kind of hit our stride a little bit. So it wasn't even that long ago. but they didn't even. They still gave us 3 stars too, so they were still kind of nice about it. But it says in the title it says Mike issues and then trails off into the actual review, says less political correctness. So Mike issues and less political correctness. I gave that one honorable mention because it sounds like a 1-star review, but they gave us 3 stars. So
Is that all it said?
that's it. That's the whole review. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they're trying to be politically correct.
And that is from Bigfoot's Grundle.
Nice.
What a name.
And then from a year ago, from someone who just hit the J, F, D, F, G, H, J, K keys on their keyboard. That's their name. 1 star said, would not recommend is the title, and only listen to the first 15 minutes. A lot of misinformation.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
We're in the business of sharing misinformation at the Archaeology Show. So
I think that says the network as a whole. Isn't that our mission statement?
right.
right.
Only fake archaeology here.
No. The title of this next review is the mission statement of the Archaeology Podcast Network. The title is Wikipedia of Archaeology. And they really just, I can't even read this whole thing. It's like 4 paragraphs and there's 3 outlined examples of why we suck. And they really go into it. So if you want to see that, just go to again, another one from May 27th, 2022. We pissed off a lot of people in May, apparently.
Yeah. What did you guys say in May?
You started
I don't
podcast and didn't
know
know how, so they took it out on you.
I know, right? Yeah, I don't really know. We only have about 12 written reviews, 11 or so, but we do have 62 ratings overall, and we're at a 4.1 out of 5, which for podcasting, I'll call that a win. You know what I mean?
Oh no, I feel like we should work on getting that up. That feels a little low to me, but I was always the kid that went for an A in class, so
yeah, I hear you. We don't really promote that out. I mean, we're nowhere close to you guys as far as
Actually,
hold on, Apple Podcast ratings go. Let me finish this real quick. You guys are at a 4.8 out of 5 with 109 ratings, because at the end of every one of your shows, I mean, it's in our outro, but nobody listens to the outro. But at the end of every one of your shows, you guys are like, please rate and review our podcast. And that really helps, you know, to get people to rate and review.
I was going to ask, because like, I know you guys say that at the end of every show. You must actually get people who truly listen to you and go do it, because
much to the behest of Carlton. Yeah, I promised sending out stickers and shirts, and it worked. So
he did that without permission. He just said, "Yeah, we'll send you a sticker." And me and Connor were like, "What the fuck are you talking about? We're going to send you stickers."
Have stickers.
So now I have a list of people and mailing. Like in January, I have to actually, we have our comeuppance where I have to send out a bunch of stickers.
You have to do it. Do you just like keep a running list and then do it?
Yeah,
like every...
I have a spreadsheet. And
Well,
so no, I've
Wow.
never sent them
Apple.
before. Like David promised this over a year ago. And I was finally like, that's why it's in our show notes now. Like if David promised you a sticker, you have to, step part 2 is to email us your address. Like there's a catch to this exclusive giveaway of like, you have to tell us.
Yeah.
Cause he was like, yeah, leave a review. We'll find you. Like we'll Google your name. Like it was like, there was no way that we could find their mailing address from a review. Like there was just,
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I do love that it was like David put it out and then it became Carlton's problem. And Connor's sitting here in the corner like, hi.
Yeah. Well, now you know why Chris doesn't mail anything out to people that subscribe to APN anymore. Like, as much as we love people who subscribe to the network and really appreciate the donation and everything, it is such a pain in the ass to mail anything to anybody ever. It just is. So, yeah.
I will say, if you guys have a lot more written reviews than we do, and you only have 1 star, the others are 5. So, and the 1 star is from 2 years ago. I think we may have even talked about it last year. It just says awful, less reminiscing about the good old days, more talking about actual subject matter. So,
yeah,
I was going to bring that up. So, do you want to? I'll read the roast from Reddit.
Yeah.
He has Boaz in his name, which is interesting, but it's spelled with a Z. So he obviously doesn't know what he's talking about.
Maybe it's just his name.
he's like the long, whatever. People are sick of hearing a group of dudes sit around hanging out. As a format, it was refreshing for a few years, but at this point, there must be millions of hours of professional hangout sessions. More writing and production and a focus on scientific communication could help your show thrive. So there you
go.
Is that a roast or is that just a good critique?
Like there's some nuggets in there that are probably worth listening to. Maybe it could have been nicer, presented more nicely.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, can you check your reviews one more time?
Yeah, let me.
Uh-oh.
I don't know how quickly they take to update.
Why do we get like Sweden is like one of our top consumers of this podcast. You should never have told me I have these tools now, because now I'm just like staring at a map. Like, I didn't know people in Kazakhstan had iPhones and like looking at downloads there.
Is it just because Swedish people like love to learn? Is that like part of the culture and they're always listening to learning podcasts?
Or is it because we butchered the Norwegians?
No, she's Danish. Maria Sletterud.
Aren't they like
Danish.
Rivals?
We're Scandinavian, right? And we'll leave it at that.
You guys are alienating every single one of your Swedish listeners right now.
We love your chocolate. No, wait, that's Switzerland. Damn it.
Meatballs. We love your meatballs.
Yeah.
We love your IKEA. We love your furniture.
Thanks, IKEA.
Right.
That's Finland. Are we still running on the joke of making fun of Sweden? Okay.
I'll read the review.
So how much of that should I cut out? Just let me know, guys.
Let it run. Let it run.
Yeah, Connor, you'll have to read the review. I don't think they update that quickly.
I just put too much archaeology.
Too much archaeology.
5 stars, too much archaeology.
Perfect.
How did your guys' review? You guys did an episode review of Graham Cock, right? Graham Cock.
Yeah. How did that one do, Chris?
I can't actually look at the numbers because Carlton's in there and we're recording. So Carlton can look at the numbers for me.
I'm going in.
I don't want to log in and wreck everything.
Wait, you published that one on Zencaster, or was that in Megaphone?
Oh, that wasn't too long ago. I would assume it was Zencaster. Maybe it wasn't.
I don't know. We've gotten to a point where we are recording like 2 days before we release. So like, I don't even know. I don't even know when we recorded it.
It's at 1.2 thousand, but that came out 22 days ago, so a little over the Switch.
Okay.
Because I noted like we were trying to get on that, and it took us forever to wrangle Toon and Shane in, which is why we skipped ahead to like episode 6. So we saw a lot of you guys were like reviewing episodes 1 and 2, and we are like, well, there's an episode on Mississippians. We have 2 Southeastern paleoarchaeologists in here. Like this is our bread and butter.
Yeah. Honestly, it was too much for one episode, because we did watch the whole series and then we were trying to talk about, but you can't talk about every episode if you just do it in one episode. So, but I think the gist of it was, this is trash. Do your own research. Don't believe it. But we tried to say it in like a nicer way, because I think we probably do have a lot of listeners that could veer towards the pseudo-arc side without some guidance. So whenever we're talking about stuff like that, we try to do it in a way that isn't just saying nasty things about Graham Hancock. We try to, I don't know, be a little nicer about it, at least. Yeah.
But we do need you guys to edit out that how we referred to that one poor man, because he's, as David said, like there was no justification for why we gave him that title.
Was literally just based on his appearance, and I like woke up, felt terrible about it. But maybe he was there. I don't know. Yeah, and. Well, I don't want to get into Graham Cock, but
can we talk about what's coming up for the APN and Culturo and all that kind of stuff?
So I would say probably the biggest like production news about stuff that we're doing is the Culturo Share events that we're calling them. We don't really have a good name for it, but I don't want to call it conferences, and we're just kind of iterating on that a little bit. But we had our first one in November. Just under 100 people signed up. I think throughout the time it ended up being about 4 hours long, because we actually have a little over 3 hours long. We have on the platform that we use, it's 2-hour chunks of time that you can actually put up, and then you have to start another session basically, but it's fluid. It brings everybody into the next one. So we had the full first 2 hours and then another like hour and a half, but the format was, again, Matilda Siebrecht from the tea break time travel show. She organized it, and she brought in 3 different people. And I don't know if she actually intended this, but I saw the subject matter and I titled it Ancient Crafts as like a theme. Actually, Aaron Dieterwolf, who haven't you guys had him on your show? Yeah.
Tita.
Episode 7.
Yeah. Okay. And so he was on, and then 2 other people that she knows over in the UK, or at least is aware of, doing various things. But basically the format was really cool. So I started the event as the guy who was running the stuff on the background. And I just basically introduced her. She was basically the MC. She would bring on the first guest, I guess you would call it. And they basically did like a mini podcast interview for like 15, 20 minutes. And then they had a presentation that they shared their screen on for maybe 10 minutes. It was a really short presentation. And then there was another, about 15, 20 minutes of question and answer that Matilda had some questions. And then we also have the ability to take in questions from the people in the chat. And it's the same format we used for you guys' live episode earlier this year. So that went really well. And we did all 3 guests back to back. And then I came in for the next half of it. Basically, Matilda threw it back to me, and I essentially just had a chat with all 3 of them. It was me and the other 3 on the screen at the same time. And then they got a chance to talk to each other about their individual things and where they overlap, and they had questions for each other, which was really cool. And it's just really kind of like continuing the conversation. So we're hoping to do these. Well, I mean, if I'm being honest, I want to do them monthly at the very least, but we're starting them quarterly, and the next one's in February. Yeah, Matilda's got the plans for that one already, and I've got some ideas for the next 2 after that. But if anybody listening to this, or even you guys, what her plan is to come up with a date and the platform and all that, and then she's emceeing the event. But we want to find like an anchor person that has a knowledge of a particular subject, and then has colleagues that they can reach out to in that subject. So we bring 3 people in that are in, similar fields, and or it's the same subject matter, for example, like plains archaeology, for example, something along those lines. And then just have a really cool, dialogue about it, and not do a presentation. I mean, partially kind of a presentation, but really more of a half interview, half presentation, with a lot of interaction from the audience and the people that are listening. So, and those are free, of course, if you attend on the day. And then if you want to see the recording in post, you have to be a member, and it's on your member pages to see any of the past recordings, and those will be up there at all times. So that's what we've got coming up for Culturo at the very least. And again, who knows what else is going to happen in 2023 with this whole advertising thing from Zencastr, because if it blows up the way they think it's going to blow up, they're being very sure of themselves. And I understand that from a business perspective, but if it even goes half of what they say, I should be able to do the one thing that takes all of my time for the APN. I probably spend 20 to 30 hours a week editing on top of everything else I do, my normal job and all that other stuff. So if I can just hire a professional editor to just take all this off my plate and do it as a job, I mean, it's going to be a full-time job for somebody. That's what I need to do. And if we can do that, then the door is going to be blown wide open for the other stuff we can do, because I'll have time and we can plan stuff and organize and do things. Right now, I'm just I always feel like I'm just trying to keep my head above water with just producing the podcast and keeping content coming out. And there's so many other things we want to do, from even just keeping up on social media and the newsletter and other little things, and just stuff that keeps us, in people's minds. And there's just never any time to do that. You're always just like, there's an episode due out tomorrow. There's an episode due out tomorrow. There's an episode due out tomorrow. So it's a lot, but that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping this is the year that we can financially get together and start really focusing on more content creation and production value. So I've said that for the last 5 years in a row, though. So go ahead.
One day you'll be telling the
really
truth.
Familiar.
Yes.
And for people who
What about a live episode at SAAs when you have a majority of listeners present?
So
panel.
I have done live episodes at the SAAs. It was which one was that?
San
It
Francisco?
was a while back. We heavily promoted it. I don't know which one it was. It may have been. We heavily promoted it because a lot of us from the CRM Arc podcast were going to be at one of the SAAs. So it was me and Bill and Stephen Wagner. I think Doug was there. I can't remember who else was there, but the only way we could actually officially do it at the SAAs was to submit a panel presentation. And so we didn't even call it like a live podcast recording. We were promoting it as such, but in the program, it was a panel discussion about CRM archaeology or some stupid thing. And it was, I mean, there was a few people that attended it. I wouldn't say the room was full, but it was unfortunate because of...
It was pretty good.
It was all right. I wish it was better because there were 4,000 people there. And I feel like we could have just filled up the room if the SAA would have allowed us to do something like that in a more official capacity. So I am all for a live recording at the SAAs, but organizing it, figuring out where you're going to do it, securing the internet and the location is all logistical challenges. Now, if you're not streaming it, that's one thing. If you're just recording it on site, then you just need microphones and the gear. But aside from that, I'm all for live conference streaming.
Yeah, I was thinking at like a bar somewhere, like after SA conference hours, when people would actually go to something like that.
Like 11 p.m. when things get real spicy.
I was thinking like maybe like 6 before things get like wild and a bar doesn't want a group of people. Yeah, I don't know.
Podcast, like, another third podcast today at the bar.
Yeah.
I'd also love to do one where like people can like call in and ask questions. I've like been looking into how to do that, but it seems like a lot of work. But I mean, I know I got a lot of people that would probably want to call in and ask.
Yeah, so one of the downsides to going to the Zencastr platform a few years ago was that it only works on Chrome and it only works on desktop, right? It doesn't work on mobile, and it has to do with the way the audio files are stored in the browser. The mobile devices don't allow that to happen. So their fundamental code base is off and can be used for that way. But they did tell me, and I don't know where it is on the roadmap. I think it's next year sometime, but they did say they're coming out with an app that would be for Android and iOS to essentially allow people to call in. You would essentially call in on the app. You wouldn't call in on a phone call. You would call in on the app, because right now the way you'd have to do it is there's external gear you have to get where you basically plug in your iPhone or Android phone into the bottom of it, you make the call and it comes through a mixer and then comes into another computer that's probably running another line into Zencastr. And it's a lot and it's complicated. It could be done, but it's a lot. But yeah, they're trying to do something a little more formally like that where you can actually call in. So I don't know, maybe that'll come down the line unless you can figure out another way to do it. I haven't really spent a lot of brain power on it.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it. And, as this episode's ending, every year, like we do, we want to thank both of you for dealing with our shit and editing out the most ridiculous things and adding Lord of the Rings speeches and, all the stuff that you do. We really appreciate that. And the production editing being on our plate allows us to do more. So thank you both for that.
Are you guys surprised at like how okay our podcast has become?
I would say it's better than okay. I mean, you guys are really great.
I mean, dial it back like 3 years ago, and I pitched this idea. Were you guys expecting us being pretty much the number 3 spot? The dirt hasn't been gone that long, but consistently we've been up there since, and for like a year or two now.
I didn't know what to expect right off the bat because I didn't really know you guys. The only thing I knew about you, Carlton, was the episode you did with Jessica and Heritage Voices. So, I didn't really know what to expect, but I was very hopeful because I've always wanted, when I heard there were three guys coming on to host a show and they're friends, they're all archaeologists, have worked together at various times, just that interaction. I was hoping for something that was going to be, not only informative like our show should be, but also entertaining as well. And you guys certainly brought the entertainment value to the APN that was lacking before that. And I definitely appreciate that. So this shouldn't be archaeology shouldn't be just a stuffy old topic, that takes place behind, at the SAAs in a room with 4 people listening to your presentation. It should be fun and entertaining, and everybody should have a good time listening to it. So I appreciate you guys bringing that to the network.
For sure.
Well, I appreciate you guys. I know how hard editing is, and like realizing you put 30 to 23 hours of it on top of your actual job that's taxing for both of you. So, and also every cut that we have only adds to that. So appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. It's fun.
Please be sure to rate and review both of our podcasts. And if you haven't listened to the Archaeology show, you should check it out. Give them their 4th rating. That would be great. If
you guys rate and review the Archaeology show, Chris Webster will send you a sticker in the mail.
Oh my God. Hey, we actually have some
Yeah, I'll send you a sticker.
If you email Carlton and tell him that you rated our podcast and tell him you want a TAS sticker, he'll make sure you get one.
There we go.
That's right. Send Carlton your address.
Yes.
And make sure and check out all the links at the bottom of the show description. It has links to the Cultura website, etc. Make sure and click those and check out any new events that are going to be coming up.
There you go.
And as always, if you're listening to our show on the All Shows feed, please consider downloading and subscribing to our individual podcast. It allows us to get numbers specific to our shows, so we may one day have sponsors and advertisers. And but now I guess that now that I know, like I have access and power to knowing how many downloads I have at any given time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll see.
Unleash the beast.
I don't know if I told the both of you, but I almost got dude wipes. I messaged them and I was like, hey, we love your, I love your stuff. I use it all the time. And then also archaeologists get filthy at the field. And they were like, I sent them the APN website and how to contact you guys and everything. And that sounds great. We'll reach out. And then they just sent me a free box of dude wipes and I haven't heard back. So, but if you guys do it, you'll get a free box of dude wipes. So.
Well, there you go.
Maybe we should do it too then.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
with that, we are out.
Thanks for listening to A Life in Ruins podcast.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Life in Ruins Podcast, and you can also email us at alifeinruinspodcast@gmail.com.
And remember, make sure to bring your archaeologists in from the cold and feed them beer.
Connor, I think it's that time for your great joke.
He says with all the sarcasm dripping out of his mouth.
I don't know. Some of these last ones have been really good.
They're good.
There've been some. Okay. Did you guys hear about the guy who got hit in the head with a soda? Well, he's lucky it was a soft drink.
God damn it.
Oh my God.
All right.
So bad.
I didn't even groan. All right. Thank you, Connor.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.